Hey, good morning. Wanted to make another video. It's been a long time. There's, of course, any number of things to discuss, but I wanted to readdress something that I hopefully have addressed in the past in one of my videos, but I think it's important to readdress this issue. And just, I want to be very specific and make this a short video. Why are you taking buprenorphine, or otherwise known as suboxone, and why are you going to a recovery program? And I've been talking with a number of patients about this because patients will not call me when they run out because they feel guilty, like, oh, they don't want to sound like they're a junkie or whatever, or when they take the suboxone, it's like further evidence that they're broken, and just generally have a negative feeling about themselves in relation to either their continued maintenance therapy on the buprenorphine or their need to go to a recovery program of any sort. And I think that that's really toxic, and it reinforces that negative inner dialogue that is so commonplace among people who struggle with chemical dependency. When you take your buprenorphine every single day, it's because you're not broken, because you're not hopeless. It's because you are taking care of business, and it's an absolute positive event in your life. Don't be thinking negative about taking buprenorphine. It's fantastic. It's the patients who don't show up that I'm like, oh man, this is trouble. Patients who are regular taking their buprenorphine and are showing up and are calling me because they're like, man, I need to reschedule my appointment, but I don't want to run out of buprenorphine because I don't want to be in withdrawal. I don't want to put myself at risk for relapse. You're taking care of business. Please call me. Let me help you. You should never be running out of your buprenorphine. You shouldn't be thinking negatively about your continued maintenance therapy on buprenorphine. You're taking care of business. You've got a chemical dependency problem, and people have diabetes, but it's the people who don't take their diabetes medicine that we're worried about, not the people who are like, this is necessary, this is good for me, this is how I take care of my health, I'm going to continue to do this. You're taking care of yourself. It's a benefit to you. It makes you, for now, the best version of yourself. You can get off buprenorphine later, and just a very predictable, slow, planned taper off of buprenorphine is how you get off of buprenorphine. You don't just say one day, well, I'm tired of this, and this is just every day that I take buprenorphine, it's just further evidence that, I've got a chemical dependency problem and I'm a broken, hopeless person. That's completely the wrong attitude. Get your head on straight about buprenorphine. The reason you're on buprenorphine is because you're fixing this problem, not because the problem is not fixed. And furthermore, about getting into a recovery program. Recovery programs, and buprenorphine for that matter, is not punishment because of past sins, okay? You're not going there as penance. You're going there to stay on track. You're either in recovery or you're not, okay? And some people, for recovery, is a residential treatment program. And for other people, it's going to a meeting or talking to their sponsor just once a month. And for a lot of people, that's the same person. Maybe at one point in their life, just talking to their sponsor was plenty. And then just things got out of whack and off track, and they just really struggled with a relapse, and maybe they need to go to residential to kind of get back on their feet again and get out of their environment and just really kind of like get 30 days or 60 days or whatever of sobriety, for lack of a better term, and then come back and readdress the challenges at home, and then maybe in a few years they'll be ready to be back to once a month. But none of my patients I'm going to say, hey, you're cured. You never have to think about your chemical dependency problem again. Unfortunately, that's just not the case. And so put your blinders on. It doesn't matter where you were before or what you want to do or what your friend is doing or what this or that, whatever, what you want. It's what you need. If you need to take your buprenorphine because you're not tapered off, then take your buprenorphine. and be happy about it. Boy, this is way better than everything else. I'm so proud of myself for continuing my commitment. This is a sacrament. This is me taking my buprenorphine every day, committing myself to a better future. I've got this under control, and quit being so negative about it. Same thing with recovery. You know, I mean, it sucks to exercise. I exercise basically every other day, okay? And it hurts, and I'm out of breath, and it sucks, and I don't really look forward to it that much, but it's necessary, you know? And it's, you know, at the end, after I do it, I'm like, wow, you know, I've made further progress, or maybe I haven't, maybe I had a not that great of session or whatever, but it's necessary for my well-being, for my management mentally. You know, I get more on edge, I get whatever. If I don't exercise, it's necessary for me to do it. Does it suck? Absolutely. Is it worth it? Absolutely. It's necessary for my better functioning. And the same is true for the buprenorphine and recovery work. I want you to definitely commit yourself to this idea. I'm either in recovery or I'm not in recovery. And for the rest of your life, you need to be in recovery. And what that means varies depending on your stress level and how much progress you've made as developing non-chemical coping mechanisms. But early on, I mean, you need to be working on those non-chemical coping mechanisms. And early on, I'm meaning like not the first few days or the first few weeks or even the first few months. I'm talking about, generally speaking, until people are ready to get off of buprenorphine. We're talking about many months, and for a lot of people, a few years. But then you're ready to get off, you know? And again, you know, hopefully a couple of shitty things happen to you at the end of this building process when you're getting to that maintenance level of you know, once a month recovery work or whatever, and you've tested yourself and the craving is under good control. And that's the final thing that I'm going to say. So I was talking to a patient the other day, and I said, how's your craving? And he was like, well, that doesn't matter. I can't use. I'm in probation, and if I use, I'm going to go back to jail. And I was like, well, if that's the case, why are all these people in jail? Because if the only thing that keeps you from using is the fact that you're going to get in trouble, well, that is, I mean, obviously that doesn't work, because people get into trouble. They get divorces, they lose their job, they go to jail, you know, whatever. That doesn't stop you from using. The fact that there's going to be a negative outcome. In fact, that's the definition of chemical dependency, that you continue to use despite knowing that there are negative outcomes. That is not sufficient. It's craving. How bad is your craving? How much do you think about using? How much does it, like, how much is that weight on you? Okay? If you're thinking about using, you're going to use unless you have an alternative, unless you're working on an alternative. So the key to long-term recovery is not thinking about using. If you're white-knuckling it and just hoping that you're not going to use, because if you use, you're going to go back to jail, you're going to use and go back to jail because you're not in recovery. Negative outcomes because of use, that is the definition of the problem, that there are negative outcomes, but the use continues. Look it up. It's in the DSM-5. That is the definition of, well, it's no longer called a chemical dependency disorder. That's the older version. It's now called a substance use disorder. But regardless, I like the term dependency because I think it reinforces the idea of the emotional dependence that people have on these chemicals. That's what I want to reinforce with my patients, is that you need to replace the chemical coping mechanism with a non-chemical coping mechanism. I can't even talk. That's my message to you today. Have a good one. Thanks.